Hey guys, welcome to our podcast tonight about Reality Check. I'm Doug Meyer, one of the associate pastors here at Trietsch. And in a minute you're going to meet our friends, but just to remind you, this is week 2 of Reality Check. And we're talking about hard stuff, about doing life, kind of the difference between mental health and mental illness. We kicked that off last week. Tonight we're going to talk about things that have to do with school and life and being a mom and being a student. And we're probably going to raise subjects like, gosh, what makes you anxious at school? And is bullying still a thing? And we might even come in sideways and talk about school violence. So tune in. Alyssa Robinson is off camera tonight, but she is happy to take your questions. So as you know the Facebook drill, right? Drop in comments and throw us a question. We're going to have some dialogue going on. But if you have something you want us to talk about, more or less, it's all fair game. So again, I'm Doug Meyer. Y'all know me. Amanda is here. And Amanda, for those of you who hang around Trietsch, is our youth choir director, super busy mom, vocal teacher, mother of Coleton, and we're going to learn a little bit more about her and her big O family in just a little bit. Coleton is just a recent graduate of Marcus High School, incoming freshman at TCU, busy guy, musician, soccer player, aspiring doctor, and just all-around good guy. So we're glad you guys are here tonight, and our goal is to have fun. So everybody take a deep breath. All right, so Coleton, I'm going to throw the first one to you. Tomorrow, okay. School's about to start, right? Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, I don't know about your brothers, but for a lot of kids, going back to school kind of stirs up some anxiety. Can you remember or can you identify, like, any time in your life, the day before school, kind of being a little nervous?
Yeah, I can tell you one of the most stressful things about going back to school was what was going to happen at lunch. I usually had my other classes figured out because I had the same 2 classes all 4 years, soccer and choir. But the unknown was always lunch, who I was going to have lunch with, who I was going to sit with, where I was going to sit, and like who was going to be there, who was not going to be there.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of get caught up in that and trying to figure out and almost stressing over who isn't there rather than who is there.
So did that stress, like, is it fair to say that was 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade?
All the way through.
Even like as a senior?
Mm-hmm.
You had soccer buddies, you had choir buddies, and you had all that, but you were still...
It's always a toss-up. You never know.
Yeah. That's crazy. So other kids who are at home tonight, maybe they're watching, maybe some of our youth are watching. What are other things that people would say to you, man, I'm really nervous about going back to school tomorrow because?
Well, I mean, you just got the regular stress of going back to school and having to worry about homework and grades every single day now. In summer, you can just put all those things aside and don't have to worry about any of that. But it just becomes like you get back into your regular going through the motions and excuse me, the stress of picking back up on that work.
Yeah. So, Mom, did you ever have a sense that your guys were wondering and worried about that? Did y'all ever talk about, like, the night before school, hey guys, let's talk through tomorrow?
You know, they never expressed any kind of anxiety. I would see it more in behaviors. They never were ones to really vocalize any kind of anxiety. We would talk about, particularly with the younger two who have they have some ADHD and they have a little bit more trouble managing their schedule. And so with them, we were always very diligent about helping them get their little process and their night process and their morning process. So it was more about how can we be the most successful on the first day of school rather than in just the first few weeks of school, frankly, because it takes several weeks to get all of that kind of figured out. But they were never expressing, like I never once heard Coleton expressed his anxiety about lunch. And I've never even heard the other two say that.
Yeah.
And even this time, Caleb, our youngest, who's 13, was saying that he's really excited about school.
Mm-hmm.
So,
not that it was that long ago, but as a kid growing up, do you remember, like, I can identify that you wanted to kind of, like, who you ate lunch with was kind of like something you could count on. It was this acceptance place? Do you remember feeling any of those feelings as a girl going to high school?
I do, but I remember more about, oh, what am I going to wear and how I'm going to look and more of those kinds of things than because I knew that I would have friends in some, every kind of class and area that I went to.
Yeah. I hear you. I just think it's funny how we've identified the lunchroom table as like this safe place. So when you talk to your younger brothers, when you talk to other kids, like, if you could just say, hey, I'm Coleton, I've been there, done that, what advice would you give them about being ready for tomorrow?
Don't stress about it. I mean, I know it's nice to have all your birds in a row, and to know going in there, but it's nothing that you need to stress over.
So, okay, I'm just going to pick on you for a minute. If your mom had said that to you, would you not have stressed?
I don't know.
So are you inclined to be a stressful guy or not?
No.
Okay, so I make up that you're firstborn male, pretty confident, right? It's okay to be confident.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, okay. And I think sometimes if you don't feel it, you fake it, right? You can just walk the hall and be confident. So I make up you also had a whole range of different kind of friends, right? Mm-hmm. What were, what was their point? What was their thing that was making them nervous?
What was the point of making?
Yeah, like your buddies. Like, let's just talk about guys for a minute. Okay. Guys going back to school. What are guys going back to school nervous about?
Honestly, I'm not sure specifically what guys are nervous about.
Well, what was this guy ever nervous about?
I always had pressure on myself to like be the best me in terms of like getting grades and being on the soccer field and in the classroom and in the choir room, and so everything that I did to excel to the very best.
Gotcha. So you think, Amanda, that like I make up that we live in this pretty competitive culture with high expectation, whether it's vocalized or not? Do you witness some of that with Coleton and the boys about worrying about, being accepted's one thing, but man, I got to make the grade, I got to make the soccer team, I got to make the best choir, and you and Brad might not even talk about it.
Yes, in fact, that was one of the biggest problems with Coleton, the fact that we were having to kind of backwards parent him, where we would tell him that he needed to drop a harder class because it was just putting him, over the top, that he was putting all this pressure on himself, which I think was coming out of the culture of the school. And just the culture of, getting into college and getting that highest placement in the class. And I see tons of anxieties in my students that way too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a counseling session instead of a voice lesson just because they're so inhibited by all of these anxieties and these pressures to be excellent and great at everything, and academically in particular.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt. There's a question from David, and he asks, do you think the stress is greater for students who have relocated from another city?
I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because at least when you're coming back a new year, you have those people that you talked to last year, the people that the soccer team last year, the choir last year, but the people that are coming from a new environment to a new environment, they come in not knowing anybody. So it's not just the lunchroom stress, but it's like stress in the classroom and like in the hallways everywhere. Yeah,
it's almost like I make up that they have to reprove themselves, because just because you were in the varsity soccer and wherever, or in the starter choir or elite choir or whatever, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be it, is it? I mean, do you have to re-audition, retry out for all that kind of stuff?
Well, and I was going to say too that in some instances it can be good. It could be one or the other, because I noticed with Caleb, when he was going from Caleb has, and he has said that it's completely fine for me to share this, but he has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and has just in the past year been on medication for it, and it's been an incredible thing to watch him grow through that, and us as a family help him grow through that. But because of some of his social issues that he had when he was in elementary school, when he went to middle school, he was actually he felt like he was getting a little bit of a reboot, because he felt like that some of the social issues that he
Yeah.
struggled with. Now, this is not, he didn't voice it in that way, but I was able to kind of deduce by conversing with him that he was really ready to kind of make new friends and be stronger, and
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know what office supply company is that you get to hit that reset button.
Yeah.
So just a little funny story that reminds me when I was in elementary school. I know you're going to find this hard to believe. Super nerd. And so when I went to middle school, I was bound and determined to be less nerdy, so I was going to try to change my identity. And in elementary school, everybody called me Dougie Meyer. My middle name it's really Douglas Allen Meyer. So all of the first day, I introduced myself as Allen Meyer to everybody. And to the last person, people would look at me and go, "No, you're not. You're Dougie Meyer." But I wanted so hard to do that reset, and I think part of that's that growing up, that maturity thing, right? So I'm intrigued. I want to go back to a question we were talking about a minute ago about achievement anxiety. And how do you think that happens? Because I make up that you and Brad didn't, like at the end of every day, say to Coleton or the boys, "All right, what grades did you make today? What's your rank in school? And, are you the starting guy on the soccer team or whatever?" Wonder how it permeates our psyche.
So, like something that I have noticed is that, like in today's classroom, like this is like everywhere as far as I know. Students have become more focused on, like the numbers, like defining themselves as a number, like your GPA, your class rank, instead of what you've learned. It's becoming more about getting those higher numbers rather than what you can learn to have the lessons that you need to know for the real world in real life.
Yeah.
And so that's what is causing that achievement.
So
anxiety.
how public is all of that? When do you find out your rank? Is that a junior, senior year thing, or?
So when I was my freshman year, they came out with it the first semester, and it just re-updated every 9 weeks.
Wow, you
Yeah.
can find that out. I didn't realize that.
But they've actually since then changed that so that these upcoming freshmen, I think it actually happened last year, they I think only the top 10% sees their ranks. The rest is just kind of obscure unless you choose to see it, I think is how it works. I'm not entirely sure about that though.
Yeah.
But it's something along the lines where they have made it so that achievement anxiety isn't as pressing.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not even just with the grades too. It's with these kids worrying about getting into college and spreading themselves so thin in activities and all these organizations so that the resumes look how they think it should or how they think these colleges should. And one of the things that when we toured TCU, one of the things that they said, one of the academic counselors or advisors or somebody said was that they are seeing such a huge rate of, they're having to have more counseling staff to handle all the anxiety and the depression that's coming off of that kind of constant striving and doing so much, and that they would actually rather, this is TCU, but that they would rather see kids focus on one thing rather than spread themselves so thin.
It's in part, I think it goes back to our culture, because we have this mantra, I think, in America, that the busier you are, it must mean the more important you are, or the more competent or capable. And in its own strange little way, it feeds our ego, right? Hey, look how busy I am, and look how much I can achieve. I must be really special. It's a weird kind of thinking. It sets you guys up for huge anxiety. And then if you're not cutting it, or if something's happening, if you're being normal, you might then get depressed because you feel like you're less than. It's a hard world to be a kid in. So the other thing I'm curious about is there's a lot of side conversation about other big topics at school. You turn on TV and you read studies and they talk about, hey, these are the hot button topics right now amongst students. For instance, school violence, shootings, bullying, drugs. Like if you had are those accurate at all for your experience, or is that just stuff that is white noise? It's just in the background that you hear on TV, but hey, that's not what we're dealing with in the halls at my school.
To a certain extent, it's something that we are aware of, and it's something that we know is happening. but it's not something that is as prominent as it may be in other places.
Yeah. So what's the thing of any of those or the other that, yeah, my friends and I, we talk about this more so than that? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like bullying, is that a deal or no?
Physical, like bullying is not something that, like, for me, it's not something that I just walk down the hallway and I see in the hallway. It's become more about cyberbullying in today's society.
So it's things I'm going to say about you on all the different social media platforms.
Because it's easier, because you don't have to actually face that person, and it's harder to, like, have direct consequences from that.
Yeah. So have you had direct experience with, like, yourself or a friend being bullied through Facebook or social media or Snapchat, or I'm sure I'm way behind on whatever the cool social media thing is now?
Not explicitly, no.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say too that Coleton being on the soccer team, those boys were watched very closely as to what they are putting out on social media, and they would get shut down by the coach if there was something inappropriate, and so I think some of the advantage of being in a team sport or choir or whatever is that they're really being watched closely. They're putting serious boundaries around their behavior.
Yeah. Which I again go back to, like, if I could give any kid in school advice, it's find your group, be a part of a team, a base, a choir, or something, because it helps you have identity, helps you have those boundaries, helps you have just automatic friends, right? So let's talk about the other hot button topic nowadays, violence, school violence. Have you guys had like a shelter in place drill, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we do those routinely.
What's that feel like?
It's kind of a going through the motions type thing. It doesn't feel like it's, like, I don't want to say like a reality, like, because I know it's a reality, but it almost feels like it isn't, because we are in this Flowermont bubble. Like, it is what it is.
Something that happens somewhere else to other kids. Yeah. Mom, do you ever worry about that? Do you ever worry about something really stupid happening at school?
I mean, of course I think about it. And I have a lot of friends who excessively worry about it, and I don't know why I don't worry about it. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's ignorance or if it's just God's got my kids somehow. Not to say that something couldn't happen. Absolutely, something could happen, something terrible. I just kind of have this faith or something that they're going to be okay. And until my world gets rocked, I'm going to,
Sure.
live there. Now, I will say that one of the things that I like to do with the youth choir is, and it's not necessarily just about school violence, but is to expose them to so many different areas where they're getting exposed to more things, because like Coleton said, we do live in a bubble, and we do live in this, I'm just going to stick my head in the ground because I'm not exposed to these things on a regular basis. So I think this exposure is important, but until you experience it, I don't know how real that feels.
Yeah. Well, and I think even though, just to keep up with the bubble language, I think the more opportunities we can all have to get out of our bubble and to, name our bubble, and to realize this bubble world might be nice, but it's not the real world, really. I mean, there's parts of it that are. So how do you get, at a house full of guys, how do you get guys to talk about this or other things that have the feelings word combined?
So the older two don't talk, and the little one talks all.
So you're included in the older two?
He's in the older two.
Buddy, feelings, it's okay.
And even Brad kind of has his words, like he's at work and he uses all his words up and then he's kind of done by the time he gets home. But of course, Brad and I talk, and we talk about how the boys don't talk. But one of the things that I've noticed is as they've gotten older, I just have to be available. And
so what's that look like at your house?
So for me, it meant, I teach voice lessons. It meant making myself as available as I could be after school. so that, especially once he started driving, so that I'm just there when he gets home, and I've got dinner prepared, and I will purposely, you don't even know this, but I will purposely, he is not a morning person. So if you want talk, it's not going to happen in the morning. But if he's coming in from soccer practice and he's eating dinner, I may just go make myself available at the bar, or I may go clean the kitchen.
Sure.
Because he might talk. You just never know.
Something might bubble out of Mr. Chatty here.
And so that's, you never know when it's going to happen. And I love anytime, like when we were going to auditions for all of his schools, we had great conversations, because you have to, you're in a car for however many hours, and so you have to. So I really look for those moments, and sometimes I put him on the spot and he doesn't want to talk, but then sometimes he does. And Troy's kind of the same way, whereas Caleb will just pretty much.
He's the youngest, right?
He's the youngest,
yeah.
And he'll tell you everything.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So we have a question. Are there systems in place to identify and help at-risk kids with regards to school violence? And I know y'all aren't the experts in that, but like Coleton, have you been given any instruction by school counselors on, when should I report something?
Yeah, we go to something called Marauder Time every Wednesday.
Yeah.
And in Marauder Time, it doesn't focus on anything specifically, but 1 week it may be suicide prevention, and then the next week it may be talking about kindness and what that means in our school. So although it's not specifically meant towards that, it's the little things that can help to make the school a better place.
And that's in homeroom, or what is that, a period, or what?
We have we have a different schedule on Wednesdays, and so we stay in our second period. And then you just stay, and it's a half hour, and then you go to your next class afterwards.
Okay, so everybody in the school on that day, somewhere, sometime, is going to have that
every single person
conversation. Yeah. So I make up that there's always a chance in high school for somebody to just kind of be a loner, to kind of not find their niche, find their spot, whatever. Right? Are there organizations that I'm thinking of the kindness thing. I saw a deal the other day where Louisville this year is really launching into that. Is it acceptable to go look for the kid who doesn't connect? I mean, I just wonder how in our schools, because sometimes it's also the kid who doesn't want to connect. How do you find them? How do you say, hey, buddy, come sit at our table? Or I don't know. I'm at a loss for words of how to identify those kids.
Well, like you said, you can go looking for those kids, and a lot of times it is somebody who's sitting alone at a table or always has their earbuds in, not just blocking everyone else out. And you can try to get to those kids, but sometimes they don't always want you to get to them. But you just have to start with the simple things, like maybe inviting them to, I don't know, maybe a club meeting that you're having, something fun that you're doing. Start simple, and then start getting deeper and deeper until you kind of figure out what is going on.
Yeah, yeah. I make up that the loneliest person still wants somebody to care about them. Right. The most withdrawn, the most isolated person still wants somebody to go, even if they're going to tell you no, hey, come eat lunch with us. I mean, I think they still want that.
It means something to them.
Absolutely. All right, so let's turn the corner here on. We got another question?
Yep. So back to achievement stress. The question is, what can we do to dial back the high achievement expectations on kids today?
I can speak to this a little bit because Coleton was born a high achiever, and it really wasn't anything that we purposefully did, but as Troy and Caleb came along and school wasn't as easy for them, it was just where it was always very easy for him. We did have to dial back our expectations, and so that, and it was difficult for us because, and we had to go. We didn't go to counseling, but we saw an ADHD coach who helped tremendously with helping us change our behavior, particularly with the younger two about when they're, just an example, when they're not performing like we think they should on the soccer field, that you bite your tongue until it bleeds. It's none of your business. You let them do their thing. And so we had to do a lot of our own retraining of our own mindset to not be as hard. And I still now have to do that with Troy going into his sophomore year. I want him to care more about his grades, and I want him, and I have to catch myself going, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
He's going to do his thing. If he doesn't get into college, right out of high school, which I'm not saying that. I have to remind myself that I don't want to put any more stress on them that's already coming at them otherwise. That they're going to figure it out, and it's going to be okay if it doesn't look like I think it should.
Yeah. Don't you feel like kind of the unspoken little sinister thing in the background is comparison? Like, we all compare against each other, and so you were just fortunate that you were athletic and talented and confident, and then along comes your brother, who is wonderfully made, but differently made.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only is the temptation as a parent to compare, hey, I mean, not that we would all say this, but in our heads we do, why don't you try as hard as Coleton? Why don't you study as long as Coleton? Or why don't you as Coleton? And it's nothing that you're saying, hey, brother, look what I got over you. But don't you feel like as a parent sometimes we do that with our kids?
Yeah, and I even, because I understand Troy and Caleb's brain more than I do. He's got his dad's brain. They think the same. So we always laugh about the fact that, Coleton and Daddy are the freak around here. We're the normal ones. And so we're trying to, we try to recognize that, that we all have different strengths, and we all have different ways that we learn, and.
Yeah, but it's in homes. Like, social media is like the huge source of comparison, because we all just put out there our prettiest or our best or whatever, and then other people look at that and go, well, I'm not fill in the blank. I'm not that handsome. I'm not that athletic. I'm not that rich. I don't drive. And so we live into this cultural thing of, well, I'm not enough. Man, we make our own crazy world. Alyssa.
Yep, we have another question. This one's a tough one. So last year, Marcus was televised for hateful graffiti. Is hate speech something that is heard much? And if so, is there any hesitancy to report it, or has it become normalized?
Do you ever experience any of that, or how did that hit your world in any way?
Well, obviously, I was a part of that. I was at the school when that was televised, and it was something that a lot of us couldn't believe that actually happened. It's not become normalized, but it's something that we couldn't believe somebody would say or even think, much less put it out there so other people could be offended. And so it hasn't become normalized in the facts that we are indifferent to it. It's just there's another one of those
Right.
slang or whatever.
Yeah, stupid phrases.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel about that as a mom, parent, knowing? I mean, it just almost feels like an invader got into your kid's school or something to me.
Yeah, it was a little surreal. It was just kind of. It was kind of what is even happening, and what are they thinking, and what is, it's surreal. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. And, it's always hot in the moment, but now that we all have a little distance from it, it's not much different than the craziness that is expressed either, in their home or social media, that person picked up on that. I mean, we live in a world now that exists, right? And in a way, I like that about a bubble, but I also know I'm naive when I think, hey, I want everybody to be this happy little team and everybody to love each other and get along. Well, that's not real life, right? So let's turn a corner here. You're about to go off to college. What's the one thing you're most excited about going away to school?
I guess I would just say the freedom of everything.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that I don't like having rules and regulations, but it's just the fact that they're not going to be there.
Yeah. You got to live into your own decisions, right?
Right,
Set
right.
the alarm and you either get out of bed and go to class, or you don't. I mean, you face the consequences of that.
Right.
Yeah. Mom,
Well,
where are you in all of this?
I was going to say that part, figuring out when to pull back the reins of letting him have more freedom even before he leaves was a tricky thing. He turned 18 in April, and it was he never really talked about his curfew after that point. He just kind of did his thing and would come in at 1 or 2, and so figuring out how to, he's going to be the one who's going to have to do that, figuring that.
Easing me into it.
Easing him into it, yeah. So, but what are my anxieties? I'm more excited than I
Yeah.
am sad.
Yeah.
But I have my moments, not because I don't think that he's going to do amazing, wonderful things, but it's just a rite of passage. It's just my first baby. And,
Yeah.
I think back to when he was in my belly and when I brought him home from the hospital. Those are the things I think about. But I'm super excited about everything that he's going to experience and go through, and I have no doubt that he'll be awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight you're kind of like our wise sage. If you could look at your brothers or kids in youth group or whatever, what's the thing that you learned that, hey, you know what? That's not a big deal. This is a big deal. What would you say to them?
Something that's not a big deal, but
You maybe used to think it was.
I honestly, I guess it would be like some people, or like something that I struggled with and I realized it was one of my biggest faults, was caring too much what people thought about me. And that's a big part of high school. Like you always want to be the popular kid, the one that everybody likes, but that's not that's not the most important thing, and that's not the most important thing like in the long run, like when you go to college and go into the real world. And so it's something that I kind of had to learn to leave behind and kind of focus on the people who do like me and the people that really care for me around me, and kind of focus more on my relationships with them rather than on people that
Yeah.
will never come around to me.
Yeah. So I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about church and faith. So going away to college is this kind of historic time that people kind of leave their church experience. Have you thought at all about how to kind of continue to live into your faith while you're at school?
Yeah, absolutely. Like finding a church home is important to me, because that's, for the past 18 years of my life, that's what I've done every single Sunday morning. I've never had another choice, and it's just become part of my routine. I couldn't imagine it otherwise. And so whether it be being in the congregation or as a music major going
Yeah.
and singing in a choir somewhere,
Yeah.
it's something that will always be important to me and find my place to fit in there.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine you've probably been introduced to like campus ministry stuff at TCU.
Yeah.
Do they have active things, active groups that you can go to Bible studies or worship time or serving time,
Yeah.
those kind of things?
They do.
All right. Well, just know that we will continue to claim you as one of our kids here at Trietsch, and our thoughts and prayers go with you for safety and for just like your whole worldview to explode, and for you to see new colors and new faces and new languages, and we just couldn't be happier for you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here tonight. This is kind of fun.
It wasn't.
Yeah. All right, guys. So, are we going to continue to go? Oh, okay. So, tune in next week and join the fun. Take care, guys. Thanks for being with us.